Okay, we will call this meeting to order here on February 23rd. Please call the roll call.
Directors Penn, Dwyer, Anzini, Mansfield, Day, present. General Manager Vandiar, General Counsel Polson, and Board Clerk Sullivan, present.
Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we will move on to adopting the agenda.
Move that we adopt today's agenda.
Okay. All right, there's been a motion to adopt the agenda. This is an opportunity for anyone to speak in public on why we shouldn't or we should. You have an opportunity to the microphone.
If members of the public would like to address the board on the adoption of today's agenda, please refer to the instructions on page 2. President Anzini, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the adoption of today's agenda, moved by Director Day and seconded by Director Mansfield. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Yes, so board members, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. We will move to communications. General Manager, please make some comments.
Good morning, everyone. Today I have an item where the district received a message from John Bach, an EID customer, expressing his appreciation for the timely response and outstanding services provided by the EID team. Mr. Bach shared that everyone he interacts with at the district is always polite, kind, and professional, and he expressed his gratitude for the consistent, excellent customer service. Providing excellent customer service reflects one of our guiding principles, and we appreciate the efforts of all staff who contribute to upholding the standard and making a positive impact on our customers. The second item I'd like to share with the board is a reminder on the cost of service analysis public workshop that we're going to do on Tuesday, March 3rd at 5:30. This is an educational item to understand what goes into a cost of service analysis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we will go to public comment. Is there any items that are not on the agenda that the public wishes to speak to us?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the instructions on page 2. President Anzini, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak.
All right, so now we will move to our communications part of the agenda. General Manager, any reports?
Nothing more to add, thank you.
Any reports from the clerk?
No, thank you.
Any reports from Board of Directors?
Just as Jennifer noted in the public information, just appreciate the staff work on during the extreme weather. Knowing what it's like working outside when things are going roughly, when the rest of the world is snug as a bug in a rug, our people were out there making sure that our systems were up and running. And just to note, just be advised that I'll be leaving for my annual ski trip immediately after the public hearing, and I will not be here for the March 9th meeting. Thank you.
That's a long ski trip. Okay. Yes.
Yes, I attended the El Dorado Water Agency meeting, and the point of discussion that was of common interest with EID was the irrigation management system. It's still being reviewed and discussed, but I think that some changes are necessary.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I attended earlier this month the Placerville City Council meeting. I took in Mr. Calvis's wonderful presentation. It was very informative, very educational, and very well received by both the City Council and the public. So I wanted to offer my kudos. Well done.
All right. Nothing? Okay.
Nothing other than somebody spilled their salt out front. So they need to clean that up. Just kidding.
Bring in the margaritas. Okay.
Hey, yesterday was National Margarita.
Yes, it was. And I don't know anything about that. Okay, so enough joy here. We want to move on to approving the consent calendar. Any items on the board that board members want to pull?
Yes, I'd like to pull items 2 and 3 for separate consideration. I still provide custom farming services for Matt Veerkamp Vineyards. It's separate and distinct company, but shares common ownership with Doug Veerkamp Incorporated. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other items?
I'll move, we approve the consent calendar absent item 2.
And
3, excuse me.
Yes.
I'll second.
All right. There's a motion on the agenda here to approve items number 1, minus 2 and 3, all the way to item number 12. Okay, board members?
If members of the public would like to address the board on the approval of today's consent calendar, please refer to the instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Anzini, there does not appear to be any members of the public wishing to speak on the approval of today's consent calendar. With the removal of consent calendar items 2 and 3, moved by Director Day and seconded by Director Dwyer, I believe we're ready for the vote.
All right, board members, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
Move consent 2 and 3?
Yes.
I'll second.
Okay, so there's a motion to approve item number 2 and 3. Any items to be discussed by the public?
If members of the public would like to address consent calendar items 2 and 3, please refer to the instructions on page 2 of today's agenda.
I have a question. I just for Brian, for our general counsel, on item 3. Well, I mean, why are you? If it's an emergency declaration, why are you abstaining? I'm curious if there were that advice, because it's not a financial matter.
Director Mansfield and I have discussed this, and your instinct is correct if I'm interpreting it, Director Day, and that is that the action that the board is taking on item 3 is to ratify the emergency declaration only. There are no other actions associated with item 3, such as contract change orders or approvals, and so given that the only action is the ratification of the declaration, Director Mansfield doesn't have a disqualifying conflict of interest, but his inclination, which I agree with, is that to be totally transparent and conservative, it benefits him and the district for him to disclose the potential conflict and to simply recuse himself from this item on a continuing basis. As you might recall, there may be instances in which he will have to participate. You were absent, I think, at the last meeting when his participation was necessitated by the 4/5 requirement for this item. But it is out of pure caution that he's taking this action.
Thank you.
All right, so we now have a motion to approve items number 2 and 3 on the consent calendar.
If members of the public would like to address the board on consent calendar items number 2 or 3, please refer to the instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Anzini, does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on the approval of consent calendar item number 2 and 3, moved by Director Penn and seconded by Director Day.
Perfect.
I believe we're ready for the vote.
All right, so board members, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries.
Okay, so we will now move to information items, the one we all love to hear. Here's the midwinter update regarding our 2026 water supplies. Thank you.
That's why I came back.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure.
If you made changes,
I did that one, thank you.
make sure you.
All right, well, I guess I could start with good mornings. Good morning, members of the board and members of the public. My name is Jordan Baxter, hydrologist for the district. Here to talk to you today about the water supply update for water year 2026. Before I forget, and Jennifer was kind enough to remind me, hydrology and the weather is a very fluid thing right now. Things are changing. So I have made updates as of this morning. So things that I'll present today in this presentation are different than what was distributed in the board packet. Here we have a photo taken by, we have a relatively new member of the hydrography team, Jason Paparo. He's pretty darn good with the camera, so expect some good photos going forward. But this is taken of Caples Lake. So that's Highway 88 on the left, and then a frozen Caples Lake there on the right. Next slide. A little summary of what we'll be talking about today. So overall, actually a near average precipitation. It's been a bit of a weird story on the snowpack side, but so right now we sit at a below average snowpack situation. Overall though, the water supply does look sufficient to meet our 2026 customer demand, noting that there could be potential impacts to hydropower generation due to drier conditions and the state of the snowpack. And staff do continue to evaluate potential for water transfers. Next slide, please. So talking watershed conditions, our lower watershed reservoirs, so that's Weber Reservoir just outside of Placerville here, and Jenkinson Lake, those both filled in late December and early January respectively. So that's nice to have those full. And then EID participates in the California Cooperative Snow Survey Program. So we measure 3 different snow courses in and around Caples Lake, Carson Pass area. We do that 4 times, January, February, I guess 5 times, excuse me, January, February, March, April, and May. We have done 2 of those 5 measurements. When we measured just before the new year, we saw 65% snow water equivalent in the snowpack to date. And then when we measured again in February, it dropped a little bit to 58% snowpack to date. Yeah.
Was that prior to that series of storms we had?
It was, yes. So yeah, it was virtually about the same snowpack we measured in January. There was a little storm in January that happened after, but before the large storms we just experienced. Okay, and then talking Project 184 reservoirs, all of those reservoirs are at, or most of them actually above our normal winter storage levels. That's due to some warmer storms that came in December, and we got a little bit of a bump up there at those reservoirs. And we're expecting normal fill cycles with spring runoff. All right, a little bit of photos here. So on the left, we're looking at snow course measurements. This is the January snow course measurement at Upper Carson Pass. That's just around 8,500 feet. On the left there, that's a construction maintenance worker. His name's Brandon Daru. I don't know if I said it to this group, but he is by far our best snow surveyor. It's crazy the knack he has for, it sounds silly, but poking perfect holes. He doesn't pick up a lot of mud. He's got a knack for it. So he's always invited. And then on the right, that is Jason Paparo, our assistant hydrographer. Sorry, if we could go back, I apologize. On the right, I think this is a little bit of hopefully can tell a little bit of a story of kind of the ups and downs of this year's snowpack thus far. That photo on the right, that's at our Pyramid Creek gauge. So if you ever hike to Horsetail Falls, that's at the top of that first granite slab. Looking down towards Highway 50 is kind of in that wooded area, and then Lover's Leap is there, that kind of that high peak on the left. So this was hiking in on January 9th through quite a bit of snow. We had to snowshoe. I had to go in for gauge maintenance exactly a month after that, February 9th, and walked in on granite the whole way. I didn't touch snow. So all that snow that fell in that 7 to, say, 4,000 foot range melted over the course of a month. Next slide. Kind of another look at this. So I pulled some satellite imagery, one on January 8th after those snowstorms, very similar to that photo we just saw at Pyramid. So snow line was down around Pollock Pines, around 4,000 feet. We had a very dry entire month. And so February 4th, that was the least cloudy day I could get. You can see all that snow receded in the Great Basin on the Nevada side and then also on the West Slope. And then fast forward to yesterday, we had a really nice clear day. It was a beautiful day. You can see that snow elevation creeping down in the 3,000 feet range. So got a decent snowpack, a lot of it melted, and then we're trending on the more snow side now. Next slide. All right, so a little bit, this is, I know I've said this before, but the snow survey program and being a part of the California Cooperative Snow Survey, I think it's a really cool thing with a lot of history, and it's a fun activity to participate in because not only is it important and useful for our planning in watershed, how much is going to run off in the watershed, it also feeds into DWR and what they forecast for not only the American River, but also statewide. And our 3 courses are the highest courses in the American River, so they do weigh pretty heavily in their decisions on water supply forecast for the American. So what we're looking at here is a plot of snow water equivalent. So you poke a hole in the snow. If you were to melt all the water in that tube, how many inches of water there would be? The black dashed line, that is the average to date for each month. And then we have 2024, that's in blue, 2025, that's in green, and then red, what we've measured thus far is this year. So you can see last 3 years have really started off slow, and we're kind of, as of February, really in the realm of what we measured in 24 and 25. February and March, and even a little bit of April in the previous years got relatively wet, and so we ended near normal. So now we're kind of looking like we're on that trajectory, but if we stay dry, there's a potential that we're more on the dry side of things.
Gordon?
Yeah.
On the historic average, what's the time period for that history?
So DWR updates it kind of fluidly on I think it's every few years. I believe right now it's 1991 to 2024. I'd have to look to double check for you. But it's a running average and they try to update it and add years to it. But I believe 91 is the start. When they have it ended, I don't recall. Next time I report, I'll have that for you. Good question though. Okay, a little snapshot of reservoir storage. So I pulled these as of this morning. So there's quite a few columns here, more than I've presented in the past. But for each reservoir, column 2, that's what the current storage is. And then the far right column, that is the percent full. There's a bit of a nuance here in that in the wintertime, we either have flashboards in reservoirs or we have radial gates that are up in the case of silver. So we can't store the maximum capacity. So the percent full, we could be spilling, but we're not 100% full. So that's the case for Weber Reservoir. But Caples, 82%, Silver Lake, 44%, but we're right at the sill of the radial gate, so we're effectively full there. Echo Lake, all 6 feet of boards are pulled from that, so it's at 0%. Lake Aloha, 66%. Jenkinson is still spilling. It's at 100%. And then Weber at 93%, but it is spilling as well. We can put, as of when April 2nd comes, we can put some boards in there and increase the storage there. Next slide. All right, so looking forward and forecasts. So DWR puts out a Bulletin 120 that is actionable around the 7th, 8th, 9th of each month through May. The most recent one that came out put it at 66%. So per the Project 184 FERC license, that puts us in a dry year. So our lake level targets and stream flow requirements are set based on that dry. They do put out kind of mid-month updates. The most recent one was 83%, so that would bump us up into from dry to below normal. So I think we're going to kind of ping pong back and forth from dry to below normal as the late winter, spring rolls on. The Climate Prediction Center, part of NOAA, they look at sea surface temperature anomalies. Currently, we're sitting in La Nina, although there are predictions that before April's done, we will be in a neutral situation. Really neutral, there's not a strong correlate to what the outcome is going to be. So we've had pretty wet years, we've had pretty dry years, so that's where we're headed, is neutral. Once again, the district is well positioned to meet 2026 demand. This is just a snapshot of what it looks like when you look at DWR's website for the Bulletin 120. I've highlighted there the American River below Folsom Lake. So come March 8th or 9th, this will be a little competition within EID staff of who can refresh first and see what the new Bulletin 120 will be. But currently we're sitting at 66%. No lunch, but I will say that Brian Deason, by and large, is the winner. He's pretty good at it. All right, so this is looking at, kind of where we stand. I talked about how we're, doing a little bit of back and forth between dry and below normal, it looks like. So just a bit of a thought experiment. What happens if we stay dry or it gets drier in the case now? Or what happens if we trend wetter and we keep getting storms in? So you see it's a Venn diagram in the middle. Either way, we're in a good space to meet our customer demand. And then the second bullet, which is intuitive on one end and not very intuitive on the other, I'll try to talk through it, is that hydro production at El Dorado Powerhouse could be constrained in either scenario. So if it's dry, that makes sense. There's just not a lot of water to go around. On the other hand, if it's wetter, if we get into the below normal, above normal, our FERC license has lake level targets and stream flow requirements that are difficult for us to operate within. And so if we do trend wetter, it still could mean hydro production is constrained in that situation. Thinking about transfers, if it stays dry, this is a little more intuitive. There's more market, so folks aren't getting high allocations, so there's a market for it. And there's also capacity through Delta, whether it's at the pumps or just in facilities to move water. So if it gets drier, transfer opportunities go up. On the wet side, there's not as much demand, price isn't going to be as good, and then also there's just not as much capacity in the facilities south of Delta. Next slide. And then a little bit about Folsom Reservoir. So Folsom is currently sitting at about 575,000 acre feet as of midnight last night. That's 120% of historic average. Just a little fun fact, Folsom increased over a 15-day period, so late December to early January, we talked about some of those warmer storms. It came up 160,000 acre feet, or 20 feet elevation-wise in 15 days. That's the equivalent of over 7 Caples Lakes filling, so it's quite a bit of water. And Folsom continues to manage for flood control. I looked this morning, they're doubling flow, I guess it happened at 8 a.m., so they're doubling flow out of Folsom right now as they continue to kind of look at top conservation and manage accordingly.
I got a question on the top one, the 120% of historical average. For years, the way they operated it was under an old model, and they would just let water go. But now they're using more modern hydrology forecasts and whatnot. Is that why it's higher than historical average? Because in a past history, I don't know if I'm making sense, but the past history, it was under the old operating manual versus now the new one, which is more efficient.
I can't talk super educated to that. I don't work with that team very often. There is new manuals in development. I will say that Folsom got very full and they drew it down quite a bit. And we're now on a fill cycle, so it's apparent to me that they are looking at the manual, they are looking at forecasted hydrology and reacting to it, but I can't speak to exactly why.
It's pretty full now, I saw yesterday.
Yeah, my wife was complaining because the area to run the dogs is getting smaller, which means poison oak and ticks are closer. Okay, last bullet there, good question. Sorry, I don't have a better answer for you. Permit 2112 is what we plan on using to meet El Dorado Hills demand. That's a local supply. That being said, we do have Weber Reservoir, pre-1914 ditch rights, as well as reclamation supplies that we could lean on. But the plan is, as of right now, permit 2112. All right, and here's just a little snapshot that I pulled down from this morning. So this is talking to that first bullet of the previous slide. This is the hydrograph of Folsom Lake. So the blue shaded region, that's the percent of normal. You can see we they ran away from it and then drew it down close to the percent of normal. So the dark blue line is this year, and now it's kind of on a fill cycle. So we do have a very warm storm coming in the next 24 hours. So those releases, while they are increased, I would expect to see that line to keep chugging up. Next slide. Okay, so customer engagement. We encourage our customers to stay informed and involved in water efficiency efforts. Some of the things that are done in that effort are complementary landscape surveys, as well as rebates and incentives for water efficient appliances and fixtures. Something new is efficiency rebates for flow monitoring devices. I put a screenshot here from the EID website. So that's that bottom graphic there. So what we've kind of had for a while now is up to $100 standard efficiency upgrades. The new one is up to $250, and that's for advanced upgrades, which include flow monitoring. So that's flow monitoring within the household. So that's a cool and new opportunity for our customers. And with that, any questions?
Yeah, just a question on tomorrow's storm, which is, like, as you indicated, is expected to be warmer. You know, I'm just curious at this stage, because that means it's going to melt a lot of low-level snow, which is more runoff, but they're probably more likely to be releasing that, not necessarily capturing it. I mean, I'm just curious from a hydrologic standpoint, is a warm storm at this time of year net good or net bad?
I think, so I've been thinking a lot about this weekend, and we've had some staff meetings already this morning on it. It is a very warm storm. The thing we have going for us, and it's supposed to rain in some areas north of 50 up to 3 inches, but at 10,000 feet. So that's a lot of water. We do have a very cold and a very deep snowpack, and it will take a lot of precipitable water to put enough energy in there to do phase changes. So we do have a bit of a sponge. How long that sponge can hold on, I'm curious. But looking at like the California Nevada River Forecast Center, they're showing Khyber's taking off pretty good come tomorrow. So yeah, we'll see, but that'll be the rest of my day as analyzing that and see what we can expect. Thanks. Good question. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's obvious you enjoy your job. I do. Or not to.
Let's go ahead and move on.
If members of the public would like to address the board on information item number 13, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2. President Enzini, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on information item number 13. Information only, no action taken by the board. I believe that we are now ready for action item number 14.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, President Anzini, members of the board. My name is Penny Buckman. I am the district's finance director. We're going to be going over our 2026A refunding revenue bonds this morning.
Will you let them know that the consultants are online? I will. Okay.
Next slide. Our previous board actions include June 27th of 2016, the board authorized the execution and delivery of the 2016B revenue certificates of participation. And then on September 12th of 2016, the board authorized the issuance of the refunding revenue bond series 2016C. In October of 2025, the district began working with our external partners, members of the financing team, the district's municipal advisor, Dildman, Rullup and Associates, the law firm acting as bond counsel and disclosure counselor, Stradling, Yoka, Carlson and Roth, and the underwriter, J.P. Morgan Securities. Today, we have Robert Poor and Laura Nichols from Fieldman and Lawrence Chan with Stradling available via Zoom to support us with any questions. Consistent with the district's board policies and administrative regulations, the Department of Finance, with the district's municipal advisor, reviews and evaluates the district's existing debt obligations to determine if there are potential savings that can be realized for full or partial refunding of existing debt. It has been determined that the 2016B and 2016C obligations are suitable to refund. The refunding is estimated to generate savings over the terms of the bond for both the water and wastewater funds. Adoption of the recommended resolution will authorize the issuance of the 2026A bonds, along with execution and delivery of related documents and other related actions. The 2026A bonds will be issued in a principal amount not to exceed $50 million, and the proceeds will be used to refund the 2016B and C obligations. Pay for issuance costs, including, if applicable, a bond insurance policy. The refunding numbers presented today were prepared by the underwriter, J.P. Morgan, and reviewed by the district's municipal advisor, Fieldman. They include certain assumptions on market conditions and financial costs. As mentioned, on June 27th of 2016, the board authorized the issuance of the 2016B certificates of participation. The final principal was approximately $38.6 million with a premium of 11.1, and that totaled 49.7 total proceeds for capital infrastructure. The proceeds from the certificates were issued to pay for the capital projects in the amount of $49.3 million, and approximately $400,000 was used for the surety, bond, cost of issuance, and underwriter's discounts. As of December 31st, 2025, the outstanding principal was $22.9 million, and the final maturity is March 1st of 29 with an interest rate of 5%. The 2016C revenue bonds were issued on September 12th of 2016. The board authorized with a final principal amount of approximately $85.2 million, $16.9 million in premium, and $9.9 for reserve fund for the 2008A certificates reserve fund. The proceeds were used to pay off the 2008 certificates in the amount of $111.4 million, with approximately $600,000 used for surety bond, cost of issuance, and the underwriter's discount. As of December 31st, 2025, there's outstanding principal of $25.2 million with a final maturity date of March 1st, 2034, and an interest rate of 4%. The financing team is recommending a non-callable bond since it provides for the highest overall savings, lowest all-in true interest cost of 2.31%, and the same maturity date as the prior debt. When this transaction is completed, the face value of the outstanding debt will be reduced by approximately $4.9 million.
Could you touch on the difference between callable and non-callable in relation to how it would affect EID?
The non-callable means that we won't be able to refund these bonds unless we put it into a escrow account. Okay. And then the lower payments will be lower in all years except for 2030 to 32, which will be approximately $58,000 higher those years. S&P also completed a review of the district's credit rating. S&P assigned a rating of AA- to the 2026A bonds, affirmed district's AA- for the district's existing revenue debt, and then affirmed the district's A+ on the Series 2022 taxable pension obligation bonds, and they also stated that the district has a stable outlook.
And then I had a question on why the, go back please, why the A+ on our pension obligation bonds, why is that lower, that rating lower than the others?
I'm not sure. I'd have to ask them and get back to you with that one.
Okay, yeah, if you could.
Unless Fieldman or Stradling might know, but All three of them. Let's ask Feldman.
We have Laura, Robert, and Lawrence all raise their hand. Laura. We'll do.
Let's go with Robert.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Good morning. I'm Robert Poor. The reason the 2022 taxable bonds have a lower rating is because they're in a subordinate lien. So the other debt is paid senior to the pension obligation bonds. And that was by design when we did the 22 taxable bonds. We were, however, able to purchase municipal bond insurance for the 22s. So the ultimate rating on those bonds, because of the bond insurance, was AA, which is the rating of the municipal bond insurer.
I think we're ready. Okay, so proposed for the board's consideration is a resolution that will authorize the debt issuance, approve the execution and delivery of specific transaction documents, allow the draft documents and other transaction documents to undergo final revisions before the transaction closes, authorize the general manager to take various actions such as obtaining bond insurance if necessary, and it will appoint U.S. Bank as the trustee for the bondholders and escrow agent for the refunding proceeds. So this is a breakdown of the documents needed to finalize the bond refunding. They're attached to the agenda item in draft form for public review as well. The indenture of trust agreement is between U.S. Bank and the district. It dictates cash flow of revenues, expenses, and payment of debt service, and sets forth financial covenants and other terms and conditions of the bond issuance. The preliminary official statement, known as the POS, describes all material details of the district, the 2026A bonds, outstanding debt of the district, and the purpose of the issue. The continuing disclosure certificate describes the reporting requirements for the duration of the 2026A bonds. The escrow agreements are between the bank and the district and ensures that the proceeds will be used to pay off the 2016 B and C obligations. The purchase agreement with the district and JP Morgan will provide for the purchase of all 2026A bonds, as well as memorialize the principal amounts and interest rates. And then the good faith estimates are required to be obtained from an underwriter, municipal advisor, or private lender as presented at a public hearing to ensure transparency regarding the true cost of borrowing. The 2016B and 2016C obligations were identified as suitable refunding candidates with a present value savings of approximately $4.1 million, or approximately 8.6 of the refunded bonds. And that was at market conditions as of February 11th. This exceeds the district's minimum of 3% savings threshold as specified in the Debt Policy Administrative Regulation 3065. And then final details on the savings realized through the refunding will only be known at pricing in March of 2026. The costs associated with the refunding will be included in the bond proceeds. Do you want to read it? Okay. Board option number 1, adopt a resolution authorizing the issuance of refunding revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $50 million aggregate principal amount, approving the execution and delivery of certain documents, and authorizing certain actions in connection therewith and certain other matters. And if staff is recommending option number 1, and that concludes our presentation, but we're available for questions.
I'll move option 1 with a question and a comment. The question is, if the 2.3% all-in interest, which is pretty low, but we know at retail level interest rates are moderate to high. I'm just curious why the municipal bonds are that low right now with the interest rates. Hopefully they don't spike up. But so first that, and then I'll make a comment.
Since Feldman prefers the numbers, I'm going to let them answer that.
Okay.
So there is a motion, right? You just did a motion?
I'll second.
Okay, now we can discuss.
So, does Robert or Laura want to? Okay, Robert.
Sure. Good morning again. So short-term interest rates are very attractive. This isn't a long-dated series of bonds. As we said, it matures inside of 10 years. Short-term, excuse me, and you have, excuse me, again. So you have various maturities throughout the years. Each maturity has its own yield, and so that helps to blend down the yield overall as interest rate as bonds mature over the 9-10 year period. Yields do go up a little bit, but it's a very attractive market, and there's a lot of demand for California utilities that are highly rated. So your AA minus rating category really benefits the districts in this refunding scenario.
And it looks like Laura would like to add something as well. No. And just for the record, it's Robert Poor with Fieldman.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Utility practice for Fieldman.
And then the comment I had was we were together with some friends, and as I get asked from time to time, so what's happening at EID? And I happened to be mentioning the refunding bonds and all that stuff, and he looked at me cross-eyed, and he's like, what are you talking about? And he said, can you show it to me? So I pulled it up, and it was showing, and he read it, and he said, so you're refinancing the bonds? I said, well, yes. But so I would just suggest for laymen that we maybe in parentheses or something include layman language like refinancing, just so it's more clear. Because he was like, refunding, what are you refunding? I don't get that. Anyhow, that's just a feedback I got. Thank you.
Director Dwyer.
Yes, a couple of comments. One is we have a public comment period on this issuance, and we've been criticized in the past for not paying enough attention to bond issuance. So I would expect when we get public comments, they should be referred to the board so we can review and try to resolve whatever issues there are. Okay. Second thing is, I think this is a good thing. Anytime you save $4 million for our ratepayers, that's a good thing. What is the impact on our cash flow?
The cash flow, we won't see the realized savings for, I think, and Fieldman might have to correct me on this, but for like 3 years. We're going to start seeing the savings 3 years from now, but it'll reduce our debt service coverage payments.
Too late for our rate study, huh?
Yeah, it's probably not going to help this year.
Any other comments? I'd like to make a comment. This is the second time or third time we've done this since Director Dwyer and I have been on the board, and certainly Director Day. When you see an AA minus and an A plus, and this is only past experience I've had with city budgets and other, public agency budgets, these are beneficial in the long run. It helps stabilize our own financial worth, but it also helps the public to understand. And as you said, it's just a refinance, and it's not just, it does save us money. And I appreciate the fact that we've gone through this process, because we do know that the pension bond that we did might have been something that the public was, what are you doing that for? Because the general public, as you said, layman's terms, they don't understand the critical part of financing. And as Director Dwyer said, we have been criticized by people not understanding what bonds do, and municipal bonds are very, very trustworthy. And our credit rating is very good. It's not in the negative areas of B's or C's. So it's really important, and it's no different than going and refinancing your house and getting a HELOC and taking some of the money in equity there. But this is different because you're refinancing all of that particular money. And just so that people understand, so appreciate all the work you've done. And I think we have a motion.
We're just going to,
public.
Laura has something
To correct.
that, well, I'm not sure if it's a correction. She
Yeah.
just has something to add.
Good.
Laura, if you're good to go on this side, if you can just unmute yourself.
Wonderful, and thank you very much for the opportunity here. Good morning, my name is Laura Nichols, Vice President of Field and Roll-Up. Just want to provide additional details pursuant to your question regarding savings. As Penny identified, there are identified savings coming in the next few years. Nominal savings in this current fiscal year, but starting in fiscal year 2027. The current estimated pricing conditions as of February 10th estimate about $320,000 for a 3-year period starting in 27 before there are slight savings, and then you will receive quite a bit more savings in the future fiscal years 2033, 2034 of about 1.9 million. Just wanted to give you that gross cash flow depiction for our current market conditions. Won't be able to finalize them for another week or two, but we'll definitely bring back those final conditions once market concludes. And I did want to emphasize as well, Ms. President, to your comment, AA- is a great credit rating and one that we will definitely optimize on when we go into market.
Thank you. Any public comments regarding this motion?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the instructions on page 2. President Anzini, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on action item number 14, option 1, moved by Director Day and seconded by Director Dwyer. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. We'll keep you up at the podium and we'll move on to item number 14. More dollars.
Okay, good morning again, President Anzini, members of the board. We're going to be reviewing the request to award a contract for our 2026 cost of service analysis. Previous board actions include December 11th, 2023, the board accepted the cost of service report and adopted resolution 2023-30, approving the increases and changes to rates reflected in the 2023 Proposition 218 notice. On November 10th, 2025, the board adopted the 2026-30 capital improvement plan. And on December 8th of 2025, the board adopted the 2025 to 2026 mid-cycle operating and capital budget and the 2026-30 financial plan. The last cost of service was completed in 2023. The board approved changes to rates per the 2023 Prop 218 notice on December 11th of 2023. The changes included the water fund at 13% in 2024 and 12% in 25 through 28. Wastewater rates included 2.5% in 24 and recycled water included 3% in 24, and both services receiving 3% from 25 to 28. Staff would normally conduct a new cost of service analysis during the final year of rate changes. However, the 2026 to 30 CIP identified approximately $328 million in projects. That includes the El Dorado Hills water treatment plant and the Silver Lake Dam replacement, with approximately $213 million estimated for debt service. This results in a need of a new cost of service analysis and a consultant contract to perform those services. We're on a very tight timeline to accomplish the cost of service analysis to ensure that the district has the proceeds in 2028 for the construction of the water treatment plant. The district cannot pursue debt without the future rate adjustments. We are kicking off the public workshop with the board on the cost of service process on March 3rd. And then the goal is to have the rates identified and adopted by the board by November 9th. Per the district's procurement and contract administrative regulation 3061, section 5E, staff recommends awarding a single source contract to Water Resources Economics based on the firm's extensive knowledge of the district's financial structure and operations. WRE was a subcontractor for the district's 2023 cost of service study, where there were 2 agreements awarded for $130,000. Staff also engaged in a contract with WRE to facilitate initial cost of service workshops with the board and the public on March 3rd, 2026, and to conduct an in-house training for our leadership staff here at the district. In preparation for the workshop and the in-house training, WRE has developed a financial model for the district's water fund, which will significantly streamline the completion of the 2026 cost of service analysis. Board option number 1, award a contract to Water Resources Economics in an amount not to exceed $156,440 to conduct a cost of service analysis. And staff is recommending number 1, and that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm available.
I have a question. You mentioned that the WRE developed a model that will help streamline things. One of my questions, I guess, or concerns is models tend to have a lot of assumptions baked in. And I was certainly hoping with this cost of service study that we could take a step back and not just coast off of the assumptions that were made. The original cost of service study was way back in 2010, 2011. And I'm hoping that we step back and question some of these assumptions and not just continue with all this old stuff baked in.
There's none of the old stuff baked in. It's a brand new model, and it's based off our current approved budget that the board just adopted.
Yeah, the use of the term model is a little different in this instance. It literally is a spreadsheet that just contains information that is from our current budget, and then we go through the cost of service analysis, providing all the information related to work, operations, maintenance, CIPs that needs to happen, and then you see what comes out as your revenues that are needed to support that, and then you determine what your rates are going to be. So the use of the term model is a little different than sometimes is used in this utility industry, because yes, I get it, sometimes models have a lot of assumptions and they can be very ballparkish. This is not quite the same thing.
That's good. I appreciate it. I just, as an example, and I'll probably talk about this again, is the...
Before we discuss, can we have a first and a second? We could ask questions, but
Yes.
the discussion has
I'll move option 1.
I'll second.
Okay, now we're legal.
Well, I'll save this maybe for when we do our, maybe the information item, because I don't want to step out of the bounds of talking about this contract. So I might have been going a little too far, so I'll hold off.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you for answering the question.
Okay.
And I think the hearing on the 3rd will give us the opportunity to really start bashing this around, because, it comes down to, we need more money. The question is, how do we get it, and how does it get, proportioned throughout the community? So, the 3rd will be where the battle starts.
I'd like to also, I'll take privilege here, also at least appreciate the staff looking at a different alternative, because in 2023, it was much more expensive. The different variations of companies to go through that cost of service thing. So we're saving some money, in order to do this different direction. But the important thing is the reason why I put it on the action item so we can discuss this. Otherwise, it would have been on consent and it might have been pulled. But is transparency as a board member to the public, to give them opportunity and a heads up. This is what we're discussing, and hopefully participate a little bit more positive more than negative. But it's just not a rate increase, that it's there's other things that are happening in building those rates. So, all right. Public, is there anyone who wishes to?
If members of the public would like to speak on action item number 15, please refer to the detailed instructions in today's agenda. President Anzini, it does not appear that any members of the public are wishing to speak on action item number 15, option 1, moved by Director Mansfield and seconded by Director Dwyer. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay, board members vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we will move on to action item number 16.
Good morning, President Anzini, members of the board, General Manager Pavani. I'm Austin Ram, Associate Engineer here at the district. Today, I will be presenting on the contract awards for construction, construction management and inspection, and construction engineering services for the Bass Lake Potable Recycled Water Supplement Connection and Bridlewood Tank Rehabilitation Project. From here on out, I will just be referring to it as the Bridlewood Tank Rehabilitation Project. Take a brevity and all that. Thank you. Previous board actions, a bit of a mouthful here. I will sum up the first one. That is the board awarded a contract to Verdonis back in October of 2023 for the design of Bridlewood Reservoir 4 and Reservoir 7A tanks with some capitalized labor and contingency. On August 16th, 2024, the board awarded a contract amendment to Verdonis for additional design services, as well as some geotechnical services and additional capitalized labor and contingency. On December 8th, 2025, the board adopted the 2025-26 mid-cycle operating budget, the 2026 capital improvement plan budget, and the 26-2030 financial plan. Summary of issue here, the Bridlewood tank is a 4 million gallon recycled water reservoir located in El Dorado Hills. A 2024 basis of design report found that Bridlewood Tank, Reservoir 4, and Reservoir 7A were identified as needing some recoating and repairs. In specific, Bridlewood Tank had some roof structural supporting elements that were corroded, as well as the interior and exterior coating being deteriorated. I would also like to note that the Reservoir 4 and 7A construction project started in mid-2025. Bit of background here, there are 4 recycled water tanks in the district. Bridlewood Tank is the largest and is the highest hydraulic grade facility of the recycled water system, therefore it is critical to the operations of the recycled water system. This tank does necessitate a full roof replacement and recoating due to the existing condition. The tank will receive a new low-profile aluminum dome retrofit, which has been implemented on several existing tanks in the drinking water system, including Reservoir 4 and Reservoir 7A. Due to the construction, a potable water supplement will need to be implemented for the recycled water system that will occur at the existing Bass Lake pump station, and it will operate under a Division of Drinking Water temporary use permit for a swivel well connection.
Where does that water come from?
The recycled water?
No. The
potable?
Yes.
Our potable water system, are you specifically referring to what tanks? Or?
Well, is it from the El Dorado Hills treatment plant system, or is it from the...
I see it from my backyard.
Yes, yes. I believe it is more up towards Reservoir 1 and Reservoir A.
Okay.
Yeah. It's, I believe, just on the side of the pressure zones. Yeah. Yes, next slide. Thank you. Some photos here. So the photo on the left is a not so existing or current condition photo that was taken several years back during the initial design. That is the center column there, and you can see the supporting beams, some deterioration of that coating and some rust issues as well. On the right is a photo of the tank exterior, specifically on the roof. You can see a lot of coating peeling and mainly gone in most places up there. Moving on to the swivel L connection. So this is a permitted technology for cross connections between recycled and potable water. It will implement district-approved backflow assemblies. It will be compliant with our cross-connection policies, and it will be reviewed and monitored by district cross-connection staff. There is extensive monitoring plans in place to ensure district water quality standards, such as weekly monitoring and sampling. And an air gap will be established during periods of non-use. That photo on the right is just a general example of what a swivel L looks like. Swivel L is just a general term for that type of technology. You can see on the right there, the blue is the drinking water. The purple on the left is recycled water. That actual connection is the 90-degree elbow up there, and that is where the air gap will be introduced. So those connections will be blocked off. A bit of a summary of the scope of work here for the swivel connection, which will occur at the Bass Link pump station, which is in that photo on the top right. A partial demolition of the existing concrete pad and construction of a new concrete pad. Installation of roughly 40 linear feet of new underground piping to tie into the potable water system. And installation of new above ground piping and appurtenances for the supplement connection. Moving on to the Bridlewood tank rehabilitation, and the tank is photographed there on the bottom right. This will involve replacing the existing welded steel tank roof with a low profile aluminum dome, removing and replacing the interior and exterior coating systems of the tank, installation of a new cathodic protection system, and installation of a new access ladder. Moving on to contracts here, so construction contract.
Before you go on,
Oh, yeah,
when the recoating, what's the expected lifespan of that?
That is a great question. I believe industry standard, I believe, is about 10 to 15 years. Yeah.
Considering that this is an example of deferred maintenance, why we're dealing with this, so I just want to make sure that that we don't see this in the future.
15 years from now, maybe.
Great point. Thank you. Moving on to construction here, a request for qualifications was issued in February, or more so drafted in February, March 2024. This involved all three of the previous mentioned tank projects, and 3 contractors were identified as a result of that RFQ: Resource Development Company, Eurostyle Management, and FD Thomas. Specifically for the Bridlewood project, a request for bids was issued on December 18th, 2025. The engineer's estimate for that was about $5.3 million. Bids were due on February 4th, 2026. We did receive 2 bids, the first one being from Resource Development Company in the amount of $4,967,800. The second one from Eurostyle Management with the amount of $5,141,000, and Resource Development Company came in with the lowest responsible bid.
A comment, it's pretty nice to see tight bidding like that.
I agree. Yeah.
Instead of it, hopefully contractors are not just now throwing, for a while there, they were just throwing big numbers and hoping they'd catch something. Do we know why FD Thomas did not bid?
Yeah, I reached out to them. They're the current contractor for the Reservoir 4 and 7A projects. I believe it was just a series of, they didn't have the manpower at the time to be present and develop those estimates. Yeah, they still enjoy working with us, to my knowledge.
I'll add on to Director Day's comment. It's also nice that the bids were close together, but they were within the engineering estimate, which is fantastic.
Yes, I agree. It was good to see. Next slide. Thank you. Moving on here to construction management and inspection. A request for proposals was issued again on December 18th, 2025. This included both construction management and professional inspection services. We did receive 2 proposals, the first one being from ICM in the amount of $360,964. The second from West Yost Associates at $683,602, with ICM being the lowest responsible bidder. Construction Engineering Services, Verdonis is the engineer of record on this project and will provide the following services during construction: review of submittals, responding to requests for information as well as assistance with change orders. And the proposed cost from Verdonis for construction engineering services was $204,182. Environmental review. This project qualifies for California Environmental Quality Act categorical exemption under Class 1 rehabilitation and minor alteration to existing facilities and Class 2 reconstruction of existing utility systems. Staff will file a notice of exemption from CEQA with the El Dorado County Recorder Clerk's Office and post the NOE on the district website if approved. I did want to touch on the project schedule. It is a crucial component of this project. So construction will occur over 3 distinct construction periods. This is due to specific restrictions to construction on this tank. The tank cannot be in service while construction is being performed on it, and therefore it has to, the construction has to occur when the recycled water demand is at its lowest, and also that is when the DDW permit timeframe is allotted as well. Those were, we worked with the DDW to secure that timeframe. A brief summary of the proposed schedule here. Board award today, February 23rd. Complete construction on the Swivell connection being around June 2026. The construction on Bridalwood tank starting in the 2026-2027 fall winter months, the October to April timeframe. That moving into 2028 and 2029. Excited. Thank you. Also wanted to touch on public outreach as well. This is a large project on one of our largest tanks. So mailers will be sent to the neighbors of Bridalwood tank, which will outline the project scope and construction timeline, as well as include project staff contact information. There is the potential for recycled water customer impacts, but that is mainly based on demand trends that are relatively out of our control. And this specific project with the Swivell connection has been designed to minimize and reduce and negate these impacts, which would include potential outages or potential requests for conservation for the recycled water. Yeah.
So have we made any attempt to limit demand or control demand for recycled water during these periods, i.e. limiting watering to every other day or something that will reduce the demand? Because basically what we're doing is we're supplying treated water and we're charging them for recycled water. So why can't we try to mitigate that demand, especially a lot of that water is, and kind of going off the rails here, but the contractor, landscape contractors for El Dorado Hills, and maybe Serrano in particular,
right?
Their incentive is to make everything look as green as possible. And I believe, with one data point, that they tend to overwater. And so if we could reduce that demand, we could maybe help with the project.
Yes.
Turn it a little bit like that.
Yes. You know, as I said before, this is kind of designed to allow these users to you know, use as normal, essentially. The 2 customers you mentioned, the El Dorado Hills CSD as well as Serrano, mainly the Country Club being most likely, or you know, most definitely our 2 largest recycled water customers. In the event that there are demand trends that we're seeing early, you know, pointing to, you know, requests for conservation, you know, we'll start reaching out to those individuals as well. So.
Can I ask that you do that sooner than later?
Yes.
But it looks a 3-year project, so enough. The outreach is really important, and I know you guys will do a great job.
Thank you very much. The El Dorado Hills CSD is where specifically their maintenance division is.
It's in
where
this
the project.
little circle.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that. Thank you for mentioning that. That is the approximate tank pressure zone of Bridalwood.
Yeah. Most of the purple that's in circle, that's Serrano area. So.
Yeah. Yep.
I can say I don't have purple pipes, so it's not my problem, but, you know, I can see the tank.
We will take good care of our customers.
All right.
Thank you. So summary of the project construction budget. The construction contract for Resource Development Company in the amount of $4,967,800. Construction management and inspection contract to ICM in the amount of $360,964. Construction engineering services contract to Verdonis in the amount of $204,183. Capitalized labor at $245,000 and a 10% project contingency of $577,795 for a total of $6,355,742. And the approved 2026 funding amount was $6,360,000, just under that. Board options. Award contracts. Option 1, award contracts in the not to exceed amounts of $4,967,000 or $800 to Resource Development Company for construction, $360,964 to ICM for construction management and inspection services, and $204,183 to Verdonis for construction engineering services for the Bass Lake Potable Recycled Water Supplement Connection and Bridlewood Tank Rehabilitation Project. Staff does recommend option 1.
All right.
Approve 1.
I'll second it.
All right, so we have motion on the board to approve option number 1. Do we want to hear from anybody in the public?
If members of the public would like to address the board on action item number 16, please refer to the instructions in today's agenda.
If I could ask, just the visuals on the aluminum dome.
Yeah.
Is that going to be a shining beacon on the hill?
Thank you for asking. It's going to be similar to our Res 4 and 7A, which is a brushed aluminum, so it's, very minimal shine. Yes, very minimal shine.
So that, we don't blind Lori from her house.
I would ask that when we do the mailers to the neighborhood, the users of the Bridlewood tank, we include a request for conservation clause in there, just to kind of get ahead of the game.
So I believe currently the plan right now is to mail to the neighbors of Bridlewood Tank, which most of those do not use.
Are not certified.
Yeah. We're not currently planning on mailing to users downstream of Bridlewood due to us making all the efforts to not need to do that. But anticipating demand trends much, ahead of time.
Maybe we could ask our board secretary wearing a different hat to start putting some
PIO,
social
public
media
information
out about this and urging conservation, voluntary conservation before we have to do mandatory.
Yeah, and most of this construction is going to be over the winter period,
Right.
which theoretically they shouldn't be using much or, if any, water. But as we know, some people set it and forget it, and or there's incentive, as you pointed out, to keep that golf course green in the middle of February. So especially the big users, we may want to let them know that there may be calls for conservation, and even if it's a dry January, their lawns and greens are all going to survive fine while we do the construction.
Okay. So we don't have anybody from the public yet?
It does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 16, option 1, moved by Director Penn and seconded by Director Day. I believe we're ready for the vote.
All right, board members, go ahead and vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 17.
Good morning, Board of Directors, General Counsel. Good morning, Board of Directors, General Counsel, General Manager.
You're a little bit angry with us.
You're gonna have to yell into that because I can't hear you, and that's significant.
That's okay. My name is Judy Calvert. I am Human Resources Analyst for the district. In late fall, CalPERS contacted the district regarding amending our contract to include PEPRA language. So this is about the resolution of the intent to adopt the CalPERS contract amendment. Previous board action, in March of 2010, the board approved our 2010 to 2013 MOU. It also approved a resolution amending the CalPERS contract, which provided different levels of retiree benefits and retiree health vesting. And in 2013, the board authorized a certification request from CalPERS to include PEPRA. In 2013, some background, the district amended our CalPERS contract, reducing the level of pension benefits for new hires, creating a second tier, 2% at 55. It also included a 3-year compensation calculation. It implemented retiree health benefits vesting schedule for new hires. In 2013, January, PEPRA was enacted. It's the Public Employees Pension Reform Act. It added a third pension tier, 2% at 62. It also reduced, for new members coming in, the compensation limits. Although PEPRA was implemented in 2013 by the district, today we are before you to codify the contract to include the PEPRA language in our contract. Because we initiated it in 2013 with our first new hire in 2013, Operations Department, there is no funding impact to the district. Here are your board options. Option 1 is to adopt the resolution of intent for the CalPERS contract amendment. Option 2, take other action as directed by the board. And option 3, take no action. Our recommendation is to take option 1. This is just a formality as we've already been in compliance since 2013.
Okay.
I'll move option 1.
I'll second.
All right, this is a simple one, no cost to us, but just getting into compliance with the pension system. Are there any comments from the board? Options there. Comments from the public?
If members of the public would like to address the board on action item number 17, please refer to the instructions in today's agenda. President Anzini, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 17. Option 1, moved by Director Mansfield and seconded by Director Dwyer. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay, board members, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
All right, we will move on to item number 18. Mr. Goldman?
All right, good morning, board. Daniel Goldman, senior civil engineer here with the district. I'm here this morning to speak to you about the Reservoir 1 filter valve replacement project, specifically construction contract awards and a project funding request. So quickly through previous board actions here, in July 2025, the project was initiated with a contract to Hurwitz Engineering for design services. In October, we came back with an amendment to that contract due to some expanded design scope, which we'll touch on later in the presentation. And then also in December, the board adopted the mid-cycle operating budget, the 2026 CIP budget, and the financial plan, which of course included this project. So a little bit of refresher information on the next couple of slides. Reservoir 1 water treatment plant produces up to 26 million gallons per day of drinking water, which is distributed to our customers. We have filtration valves and actuators at this plant that are original equipment and have reached the end of their useful life. These are critical components to the water treatment operations there. One thing to note, all the work here must be completed during the annual outage of the plant from October to March. And again, this happens every year. We're doing maintenance to our canal system. So this treatment plant comes offline and we're able to meet demand during those lower demand periods with Res A and El Dorado Hills. So some background on the plant itself. This is a filtration and chlorination process. So the filter complex, of course, is a critical component there. And the valves that we're replacing are critical to the operation of those filters. So again, this is original 1989 equipment. We've seen operationally that we have multiple valves that are failing to seal at full close. Our mechanics and operators have done a great job of keeping the plant operational, but there's been a lot of labor and tinkering with these valves involved with keeping the plant operational. Failure of any of these valves would result in significant impacts to production. Of course, we would have to take filter cells offline, and the production of the plant is then, significantly hindered. There's also regulatory implications if we were to have a failure, mainly in the turbidity side of things, water that may be being directed somewhere it's not supposed to, leaving the plant with high turbidity, things like that. So those are kind of some of the consequences of failure. One important note here, this project addresses the filter gallery valves only. I think we mentioned this in a previous presentation. We have control column valves as well that are on the other side of the filter complex. Those will need to be addressed in a separate CIP, which I do believe we have planned in the coming years. And then before we leave this slide, these replacement valves were a long lead item. You may recall we pre-purchased these in November of 2025, and we're going to take delivery of these, if all goes as planned, in September of this year. So here we have some project overview information to kind of orient yourselves with where the construction is going to take place. First, I'll kind of walk through the plant itself. So starting on the left side, the water here is coming in from 4-bay reservoir. We have our chemical addition and flocculation basins on the left side of the screen here on the headworks of the plant. From there, that water moves into the sedimentation basin, which is kind of the long snake through the center of the plant there, and then into the gravity filters and onto the chlorination process. So where this work is going to take place is 3 primary locations. First, the operations building itself. There's a lot of electrical work and controls work that's going to be done in there. Then we have the filter complex, which is just below that on the screen here. That's where all the physical valve replacements, associated piping modifications, conduit runs, electrical relocations, a lot of that will take place. So that's a bulk of the work. And then we also have the backwash pump station, which we are going to integrate into a more modern control scheme as a part of this project, as we're going to be replacing a programmable logic controller, which we'll talk about here shortly. So scope of work, we have 24 valve and actuator replacements. That is the heart of the project. We have 8 filter to waste, filter effluent, and backwash air supply valves. When the project got started, it was discovered that a 120 volt circuit was powering all 24 of these valves down in the gallery, which is shown on the right. So we are moving, we're moving to a 480 volt power supply, which is much more appropriate. It will eliminate all of the operational issues that we have associated with trying to run valves simultaneously and overloading these circuits, and really make life easier for the operators, make the plant more efficient. Along with that, we have a PLC replacement and relocation for a few different reasons. First, this is going to improve future maintenance access. As I mentioned, we have the control columns that will need to be addressed in the coming years. Right now, a lot of that equipment is mounted right on top of one of our control columns. So getting that out of the way at this time will make that future project a lot easier. Additionally, it'll modernize and standardize our control scheme with what we have going on at Res A and El Dorado Hills. So we'll be changing the control voltage and then putting in a modern supported PLC. Beyond that, I mentioned the backwash pump station. So we'll also be modernizing that control. And since we're relocating that PLC, it's just a good time to bring that control into the new unit as well. So we issued a request for bid on January 7th and held a mandatory pre-bid meeting on January 27th, followed by a public bid opening on February 6th. So as you can see here, we received bids from 7 general contractors, which is a great turnout for the project and the pre-bid walk. The engineer's estimate is listed at the bottom of the screen there at $3.7 million, and you can see Cushman was our low bidder at 3.1, all the way through Auburn Constructors at 4.5. It's worth noting there's a pretty good cluster there at around $3.5 million. So we feel that the bids were all appropriate. It was pretty tight. We got a lot of questions, so we felt like the contractors were paying attention. One other thing I think that we're working on as a department is trying to release bids during this slow winter window for the contractors. So when we're able to do that, like we were here, we get a lot of interest, and we think we get the best value for the project. So we are comfortable with Cushman, and that's going to be our recommendation in the board options.
I think it also shows a tendency for contractors that are willing to work with our EID and our engineers. There's occasions where the contractors really don't like to work with certain organizations. So this is a good thing. This shows that we're doing our job and they're doing their job, and it's good that we can work together.
Yep, 100% agree. Yep, next slide. So we'll go through supporting contracts here. This is construction inspection services. I do want to point out here that this does not include construction management. I know we often lump those together. That will make more sense as we move through the next few slides. But we issued a public RFP for inspection services on January 7th with a proposal deadline on February 5th, right in line with our construction bidding. We received 5 proposals. ICM Group came in as the low proposer at $250,000. Their proposal was strong. The experience necessary was there, and we have a good track record with ICM, so we will be recommending proceeding with that contract as well. We're putting construction management and construction engineering services into one slide here in one contract. We're recommending moving forward with Hurwitz Engineering for both CM and CES. So on the CES side, they're the designer and the engineer of record up to this point on the project. So that's pretty standard practice for us to move forward with them as the construction engineering services firm. As far as the construction management goes, this project is a bit unique in that it will require very extensive coordination between the engineer, the construction manager, district E&I staff, district engineers. There's going to be a lot of hands involved with making sure that everything that we are modifying at Res 1 is fully vetted and tested from a controls standpoint before the plant needs to produce water in the spring of 2027. So for that reason, we'd like the CM and the CES firm to be the same firm so that nothing is missed. Everybody has the right background and familiarity with the project as we work through testing. So that being said, we are going to recommend a single source contract for $233,000 with Hurwitz. So a little bit on project schedule here. Of course, we're at the February 23rd meeting here. So assuming that we do move forward with contract awards, project submittals would be in the March and April timeframe. Mobilization for construction would likely be in May. The water treatment plant would, of course, be online at that time during peak demand. We'll do everything that we can as far as electrical work, civil work, trenching, things like that ahead of the shutdown of the treatment plant, which will be roughly October, depending on how the water year goes. Once the treatment plant comes offline for its routine winter outage, we would go into the filter gallery and actually perform those valve replacements, make all those terminations, and do all the things that can't be done while water's flowing. From there, we would move into system testing, likely around February, spilling into March, with a goal to complete construction and have the plant ready to produce water before the end of March of 27. Quick note on environmental review, the project is exempt from CEQA, and it's just a Class 2 replacement of existing facilities exemption. So we'll summarize the construction budget here. We have the construction contract recommendation to Cushman at $3.1 million, construction inspection ICM at $250, CM and CES combined $233 with Hurwitz, $150,000 for capitalized labor and a 10% project contingency, bringing us to just over $4.1 million. So the project funding here, a bit of discussion necessary. The 2026 to 2030 CIP allocated just shy of $2.7 million for construction for this project, funded out of the 2024A bond. course, we just mentioned we need $4.1 million to complete the project, which leaves a gap of just over $1.4 million in additional funding required to complete construction. The 2024A bond fund balance was fully allocated for the current CIP. So we're recommending two transfers. The first in the amount of $540,000, still 2024A bond funding, but from the Powerhouse Fiber Communications project. This particular project has been delayed while staff evaluates alternative means to meet those project objectives. So we're recommending pulling that funding there. And then an additional $889,000 from the available bond fund balance by reducing allocation from the Placerville Drive Hangtown Creek Bridge Replacement Project. Excuse me, that's a mouthful. From the 2027 allocation of that project. So that brings us to that $1.4 million that we need. And I imagine there may be some questions there. So I'll kind of pause for a second before we move to board options.
It's creative. But, you know, it's very transparent. I like that you're showing all this.
Okay, perfect.
You can ask a question?
I'm just curious why the difference in the CIP allocation and then our ultimate engineer's estimate.
Yeah. So the $2.7 million, that estimate was generated at the time when the project was anticipated to be a pretty simple replace in kind with those valves. It was not until the deficiencies with the electrical and the control systems were identified that the engineer's estimate increased by that $1 million margin.
Appreciate it.
And as I remember, we addressed the Placerville Drive Hangtown Creek replacement consent calendar earlier. So does this all jive in terms of timing and the actual funding estimation on these couple projects?
I'll let John take that.
Yeah, correct. So the Placerville Drive, again, that is not an EID project per se. That is a City of Placerville that EID is responsible for paying those costs as the project goes to construction. So we previously entered into a reimbursement agreement, I believe, as well. Again, setting up that partnership with the city. So the dollars that we are pulling back are bond funds that were planned for next year in 2027. So we will pull those back and we'll identify additional funds as that project moves forward to construction next year in next year's CIP. So likely that will come back in the form of PAYGO or additional rates or water rates that are available next year as we reprioritize our projects. But again, going forward, this will be for all CIPs. If we have, so as part of the budget approval process, the board authorized the funding for the CIP this last year. We'll be balancing that with all these projects as we go forward, either if we have additional funds available or additional funds needed to complete these projects.
John, is this kind of a new format? Because I've been here a long time and I don't recall this level of detail of the funding sources.
It is. So again, we want to be completely transparent and identify exactly where these funds are coming from as we proceed.
I just want to add that as we deal with these projects that end up costing more for different reasons, we are limited in where we can find the money to cover those costs. And so it means moving money around, and we will be doing a lot of that over time. So the intent here is to be completely transparent and show where the money's coming from. And then as time goes with the Placerville Bridge project, finding money to replace that, right? Because we're taking away from something else. But this is our reality, and there is a need because the CIP was approved by the board. So we want to make sure that we're clear on where the money's coming from within that CIP, within the budget, so that you're aware of what those changes are as we move forward. But yes, there's a lot of that. It's, if you will, there's an expression that I'm familiar with, and I don't know if you're all familiar with it. It's you're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Well, that's okay. Oh, sorry.
But it is our reality. And sort of further enhances why we have to engage in that cost of service analysis, because we're doing a lot of that.
No, I think it's very understandable that we're doing that, but I like the fact that we're reporting in more detail that we're doing that. I think that's excellent.
Yeah, and, just looking at, the extensive board packet, the fact that these are original valves from 1989, that's a long time ago. And then, things that have to be fabricated, and the idea of incrementally getting Res 1 back to where it needs to be is part of the long-term stability and robustness of the organization, working into the intertie and all the rest of these things. I mean, but it's going to cost money, which goes back to our cost of services, study. So it all integrates. So I appreciate the work, but it's daunting. So
I would like to make a comment. It's really important that people understand that our employees are doing the best they can to find the funding for the things that keep the water running clean and safe. But I also want to remind the public that we had block grant funds that were clipped and cut for EID, had earmarked for other capital improvement projects. So we have to be very creative in order. It's kind of like being in the Depression. You kind of have to be creative, and I appreciate the staff working on this and allowing us to understand and proceed with our public constituencies that we're being as smart and as frugal as possible, but we still want to be safe. So much appreciation for that. And like everything, transparency answers all questions.
We were just going to shoot back to John real quick so he could introduce himself for the record.
Yes.
John Money, Director of Engineering.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Are there any other questions, or you want to make another comment?
He's going to read the option.
Okay, go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, so to wrap up here, option 1, award contracts in the not to exceed amounts of $3,110,600 to Cushman Contracting Corporation for construction, $250,185 to ICM Group Incorporated for construction inspection services, and $233,750 to Hurwitz Engineering for construction management and engineering services, and authorized budget transfers in the amount of $1,428,989 to the Reservoir 1 filter valve replacement project, project number 25021.01.
Thank you. All right, there's a motion.
I'll move option 1.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion on the floor to approve item number 18. Any comments from the public?
If members of the public would like to address the board on action item number 18, please refer to the instructions in today's agenda. President Anzini, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 18, option 1, moved by Director Dwyer and seconded by Director Mansfield. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay, board members, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. So I would like to hear from our council regarding the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, President Anzini. The board will now recess into closed session in order to consider the 2 matters that are listed on today's agenda as closed session items A and B under the relevant statutory provisions that are listed there. I anticipate that the board's consideration of these 2 items will require at least 30 minutes, but it could be longer.
Thank you. We will recess to closed session.
The board will report back not before 11:10, but it could be after.
We'll bring the meeting back to order. I'll have our council report.
Thank you, President Anzini. The board met in closed session under items A and B, and for both of those items, it provided direction to relevant staff but took no reportable action. So that concludes my report.
Okay. Any items that the board wants to address here towards direct to staff?
For a future board item, I think we might need, given what happened in Nevada County at the penstock, and I know our penstock has some pending repairs that we've deferred because trying to keep our capital expenditures down. I'd really like to know what our risk is compared to what happened in Nevada County.
Yes, the 800 PSI at the bottom of that penstock, it flashed across in my head when I saw that happening.
We'll bring that back as an item. I can tell you high level, when I found out what happened, I reached out to our staff. We do regular inspections to ensure that there are no vulnerabilities that will cause an immediate failure. There are a number of projects that are pending, and so we will bring an item back that describes that entirely for all of you. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Then we declare this meeting adjourned until March 3rd.
At 12:16 p.m.